Welcome back, right? We've got week 16. Sorry, week 16 of my CELTA tutor and training journey. So week 16 consisted of 2 input sessions per normal on Tuesday mornings, and we had a slew of TP7s on Thursday morning. So input sessions, here we go. The first one was language awareness. So scheduled was it changed a bit. We were supposed to have language awareness a couple weeks ago. There was an issue. Anyways, language awareness. We worked with conditionals. So really the whole session was dealing with meaning, form, and pronunciation of all the conditionals. I thought this was very apt because some of the issues that we're seeing in the lesson planning process and the submissions of the lesson plan. So candidates are still struggling a bit being able to work with meaning, form, and pronunciation. Get more into the details when we talk about the observed lessons. So the session started with how many conditionals are there? Lots of chatter about that. So then the tutor sent them off to match some sentence halves. He was working with music, which was nice. And then they identified the artist of the song. So it was just kind of lyrics from the song, but they were all in conditional form. Great. They worked together in breakout rooms, were given the answers, and then there was some questions. So which type expresses unreal conditions? What is significant about the form of these unreal types? They had to look back at the song lyrics and identify an example of the 3 types, any sentences that don't fit a specific type, and the pattern that they do follow. So they went through, did it like in pairs, breakout rooms, blah, blah, blah. Then the tutor went back through, elicited the answers, and raised the teacher's awareness of aspects of meaning, pronunciation, and form during that feedback. So he kind of went through the whole MPF with them, like language analysis, discussing after they had been in breakout rooms. And so then matching the different types of conditionals. Let's see, what else? There was a short discussion about mixed conditionals and expressing hypothetical situations. They had a worksheet to do. It was pretty much on the varying structures of hypothetical conditionals. Their function, possible context. Again, it was kind of like doing a huge language analysis for like the whole session. Then they were sent to breakout rooms to develop an outline of a lesson plan. So because they had kind of gone through the whole thing of language analysis, it's okay, great. Now let's apply this practically. Like if you had to teach this, what would it look like? And then to wrap up the session, there was a slide for reflection. So if you're planning a conditionals lessons, do you think it would be more useful to separate them by type, real and unreal, function, why? Yes. And so it was just kind of helping them get through the language analysis section, which I think was absolutely necessary at this point in the course, because some of the things that we're seeing on their lesson plans are not really up to standard in terms of how they're doing their language analysis. The next session was on the teaching exam classes. I don't like teaching exam classes. I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm not a huge fan of teaching exam classes. There's many people that are specialized in teaching exam classes. I have taught for exams before. It's just not my favorite thing to do. I don't know why, but I also have very peculiar taste. Like I love teaching business English, and most people think that that's boring. So listen, Teaching exam classes, you need to know how to do it. If you want to specialize in it, go for it. There's a huge market for it. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it is a reality. So teachers have to be prepared to do that. So the tutor went through the different type of exams that are available, the format of the test, the skills and the strategies that you need to prep the students for taking the exams. It was quite interesting, very up to date. So good that, yeah, he double checked on all of the changes and new things that are happening in the exam world. And then, so it was interesting though, because it's funny. I'm aware of what's going on in the exam market, but I'm just not really like into it. Some of the teachers though had really no idea beyond some of the Cambridge Suite tests, the other tests that are available. So there's some misconceptions there. There was a general discussion to start the session off, divided into groups and breakout rooms. And they discussed, have you ever taken or would you ever like to take the exam? So he went through like a bunch of exams. Are the exams relevant for your students and why? And how are exam prep courses different from regular English courses? Which is a good question to ask. So they had discussions, they came back, they read, they were giving a text to read and complete the answers, and then discuss to what extent they agree with the opinion of the author of the text. So then the tutor gave some suggestions on what to focus on. So language, type of exam tasks, strategies. He went through different types of tests and activities that they might be required to do. They were sent into groups to analyze 4 different speaking exams. Oh yeah, he did go through like a speaking exam. What was it? Well, he went through all the different parts and kind of compared like, okay, speaking exams for Cambridge Suites, IELTS. Do you know what I mean? So he could compare them all so you could kind of see the differences between them. Went through the number of tasks, the type of tasks, the number of words, times to write, times to listen, speak, blah, blah, blah. If they're offered electronically via the computer or if they're still written form. I mean, most of them are offered still like computer and paper based, but any other skills. And then, sorry, it's like every time I record, there's like a truck going by or whatever. Recording at home, welcome. Okay, and then they presented their ideas for writing tasks. Let me see. I'm trying to see. He just went through writing, reading, listening. Like he went through the whole thing, and he then gave some preparation materials. So some examples of exam prep materials that the teachers might be interested in using with their own students. So yeah, just pretty much going through and looking at the comparison. Like here's the composition of exams. Here's what you have to deal with when you're teaching exams, and then kind of comparing that to the obvious differences of teaching general English classes. So that was week 16. Week 16 also included TP7s for 3 of the candidates. So TP7s, it was the last of the TP7s. Yeah, so the TP7s were again fine. Everybody's like passing, you know, it's not, I shouldn't say that no one's at risk of failing, because there's some performances that are right at the edge of passing. So one of the things that I did notice this week specifically, there was a couple of things. One, the language analysis. It was good that we had the conditionals session, but there are still some concerns about the candidate's ability to independently analyze language. So when they're doing it together or in groups, or have some sort of assistance, then typically it's okay. But independently, there are some mistakes still. So that's an issue, especially that we're leading up to TP8. And TP8 will be externally assessed for some candidates, and they're going to be 100% on their own for materials prep, lesson planning, and everything else. And they have been with TP7. There were minor support given, but TP8 is predominantly independent. So, yeah. So language analysis. If people haven't really, I'm not a huge fan of doing language analysis. Like, it's tedious, but I also kind of like it because it's kind of like a puzzle that I have to solve. So I think it depends on the person, but language analysis is quite important, especially for the language analysis that that teachers should be doing prior to giving lessons. It's not for your students directly necessarily. It's for you to make sure that you completely understand what you're trying to introduce so that you're not misinforming your students. But then also that you can look at something and say, okay, so here are all of the details and the idiosyncrasies of this target language. And I wholeheartedly understand this specific target language and am comfortable introducing this to students, especially if they have any questions. I know that I'll be able to answer them. So if you're not doing proper language analysis, you're just kind of hurting yourself. Well, you're actually might be setting yourself up for failure, especially if your students have questions that you can't answer. If you're doing it in an observed lesson as well, that's always concerning. And the other thing is feedback to students. People are really shy or timid, I would say, in correcting students. We can't overcorrect, obviously. In CELTA courses, we have 45 minutes, so we can't just like constantly be correcting people. But if you're doing a lead-in and people are making mistakes, obvious mistakes or things that are impeding understanding or communication, then feel free to address them. I mean, they're there to learn. They're not there to just participate and this is fun. They're there for educational purposes. So if they're contributing in some way and their contributions have some major errors, mistakes in them, and that we need to address, feel free to take 30 seconds and throw it up on the board and drill pronunciation if that was the problem, or clarify some form of, I don't know, of understanding that they have a misunderstanding about. So yeah, feel free to correct your students. Excuse me. This group tends to only correct in delayed feedback, which is problematic because some things need to be fixed on the spot for communicative purposes. So if you're doing a CELTA, I mean, if you're teaching in general, you should be giving error correction to your students. You need to be giving them feedback. If you're doing a CELTA, I would say don't be. I think this comes from that teachers are so confined and handcuffed to their own lesson plan that if it doesn't say feedback in the stage, then they're not going to give feedback. And so, yes, there is a stage for feedback, delayed feedback, especially after when we do like the tasks and things like that. Okay, so you do an activity and then you give delayed feedback. But during activities, during discussions, during lead-ins, during whatever, brainstorming or whatever they happen to be doing, if you're not giving them feedback, you're missing out on several opportunities to help the students, because at the end of the day, it needs to be a productive class for them. So so feel free to correct students and to give them feedback outside of the feedback stage. That's not going to be problematic. You have to manage your time well, and you have to prioritize what you're giving them feedback and correcting them on. But you need to be doing that outside of the feedback stage as well. Yes, I think that's it for this week. Next week, as a spoiler, next week is week 17, and we do have the external assessor coming in. I'll be giving a session, and I'll be assessed on my session, and we also have the external assessor sitting in on the teaching practice. So I'll let you know how that goes, and I'll be back with another week of CELTA Tutor and Training.